Let's farm the creaking. I'm your host, Ledoux. In this episode, we're going to build a super duper simple resin farm. We'll also include an optional daylight sensor to automatically turn it off during the day for long AFK sessions. That way you're not adding needless lag to the world. Before jumping into the build tutorial, we need to talk about the spawn range of the creaking. So from the heart, the creaking can spawn up to 16 blocks horizontally and up to 8 blocks above or below. So in this entire 17 by 33 area, there needs to be nothing else. Nothing that the creaking can spawn on. Only the farm. And regular spawn proofing rules apply. It can't spawn on buttons, glass, leaves, anything that a normal mob can't spawn on. So at the bare minimum, we need to build this at least 8 blocks above the ground. And then double check to make sure that there is nothing within 16 blocks of this farm that it could spawn on. But honestly, I would recommend building it more than 44 blocks above the ground. That way, just in case something goes wrong for some reason, the creaking will fall off of the farm and then respawn up there. Whereas if you only built it 8 blocks above the ground and something went wrong, the creaking could just wander away and you would have to wait for daytime. So all in all, it is totally up to you how high up you build this farm. But just to play it safe, I would recommend going up 50 blocks and building it up here. Either way, we're going to start off by building a 7x7 glass platform. It needs to be glass or leaves, just something that the creaking can't spawn on. And you could make it bigger if you want more room to work with. This is just the bare minimum size. Then we're going to place a double chest in the floor with a hopper pointed into it to collect our resin, and you could always expand this if need be later on. But 2 blocks behind where the hopper is, we need to place 2 solid blocks. So 2 solid blocks, 2 blocks away from the hopper. Then on top of the frontmost block, we're going to place a pale oak log, then the heart, and then another pale oak log. And make sure that all of these are facing the same direction for the heart to activate. As long as the heart is orange, you're all good. Everything is correct. I would also recommend waiting to place in the heart until you're totally done with the farm. That way it doesn't spawn a creaking to torment you up on your platform. But either way, your heart will go right there. But we need another pale oak log here on the front next to the bottom log, and then a sticky piston facing down next to the top one. Now you don't really have to, but I would recommend placing a couple of buttons right here, 2 on each side, above and below the heart, just to prevent resin from growing on those logs. But then back here, we need another block, then another block going out, then a third block going diagonally up, so that we're left with this. Now we need a repeater on a max delay pointed into the backmost solid block, and then redstone dust on the other 2 blocks. Now we need a solid block on top of this repeater and a redstone torch on the front side, and it will start clocking as soon as you place that torch. But we need a regular piston above that torch facing toward the back, and it will start moving as well. So go ahead and place a lever on the side of one of the blocks that has dust on top and turn that lever on to make it stop. Then place a redstone torch on the side of that piston and dust on the top of that one. And now when we turn the lever off, both pistons should move with the clock, like so. And now we're totally done with the redstone. Now to build the spawn platform. So place solid blocks surrounding the block of air in front of this piston so that you have a hole right in front of the piston. Then place 2 more blocks going up on all 4 of these so that we have a 3 deep hole right here. Then throw a trident down the hole so it lands on the bottommost block. And then we need to go out by 7 blocks on each side so that all 4 sides will have an arm sticking out that is 8 blocks long. It needs to be exactly 8 blocks long because that's where our water is going to go. But then we need to go diagonally up and surround all 4 of these arms with more solid blocks, just surrounding them all the way around so that we are left with 4 canals and a hole in the center. So once we have our 4 canals, we just need to place a bucket of water on the very last block of all 4 arms. And the water should flow right up to the hole and stop. So just go through and place your 4 water buckets so that you will be left with this. Then go up by glass along the outer edge where the solid blocks are, all the way around, just to contain the creaking into the canals and prevent it from spawning where it shouldn't. You could even poke out the corners to save 8 glass and 8 blocks if you really want to. But the next thing we want to do is build the daylight sensor part. So you don't have to, but I would recommend placing 4 solid blocks next to that dust, a daylight sensor right there on day mode, and then 3 more dust connecting that together. So you'll have 4 dust in total plus the day mode sensor. And all this does is keep the farm turned off during the day. So even if we turn off the lever to set the farm to on, the daylight sensor will keep it from turning on until it's nighttime. Since the creaking can't spawn during the day anyway, it's just nice to cut down on needless lag when playing multiplayer. But if you're on a solo world, then it really doesn't matter if you include the daylight sensor or not. All that's left is to build the collection system, which is super duper easy. Start off by placing 2 blocks next to that backmost block right there, then 3 blocks coming forward, then 2 blocks diagonally toward the chest, on both sides, so that you're left with this kind of semi-circle thing. Then place glass on top of all of these blocks to prevent spawns and to make sure that items can't land on top of them. Oh, and we actually need to move this lever. I didn't even think about that. So replace the lever with a glass and then put the lever over there. You know, really, as long as that lever activates any of this dust, it will turn the machine on and off. So it doesn't matter where you put the lever exactly. Then place 2 glass on top of this chest, the bottom one so that we can open the chest, and the top one to prevent items from landing on the glass. Then a water bucket in both of the back corners. So 1 water bucket on each side in the far back corners, and so all of the items should flow down toward that hopper. Now the last thing to do is above this hopper, we need to place a button. But the button needs to be 1 block above the hopper so that it doesn't block the water. So 1 block above the hopper, place a button to prevent the creaking from spawning there. And that's it. We are now completely done with the farm. Then as long as the lever is turned off, the farm will be on. But the daylight sensor will keep the pistons from moving until it is nighttime. And I made sure that the daylight sensor is not lowering the rates at all. It turns on the farm before the creaking can spawn, and it turns the farm off after the creaking has despawned. But I also would recommend continuing to use the lever as an on-off switch, just because this is using a trident killer, so you do need to turn those off before you leave the area. Now, the most important part about using this farm is never ever look at the creaking while it's in the hole. If you look at the creaking while the piston is moving, the creaking will get pushed by the piston into some blocks. And then since we can't really move the creaking, he's going to just be kind of stuck here for the night. And that's where building this up in the air is really nice. Because if this happens, you can just break these blocks, make him fall, and a new one will instantly spawn up in the chamber, and you can just keep it a-going. So like right there, we already have one back in the chamber farming the resin. And resin can only be farmed once every 5 seconds. But now let's go over some of the things that I tried and learned along the way, so that we can all learn about these things together. A really important one is that the size of the spawning platform matters. If you have a big one like this, they spawn instantly, but I thought that might be kind of overkill. So I tried this tiny one, and they take forever to spawn. So this actually lowers the rates. Whereas the forearm version gives them enough spawn area to where they instantly spawn as soon as they can, but is still cheaper than building a giant square. Aside from the spawning platform, all that's really left is the harvesting method for the resin. So this one ended up overly complex, so I tossed it aside and made a simpler version. But the first thing I was trying was just poking the resin with pistons. This is probably the first thing that comes to everyone's mind when it comes to harvesting something. It's just, let's just poke it with a piston. But the problem with this was resin was just flying all over the place. It was teleporting through blocks and teleporting under the farm and teleporting under the hopper and just going crazy. So I finally was just like, okay, we're just gonna push the log. But of course, I needed to test and make sure that surface area didn't matter when it came to resin. And it doesn't. If you have a giant wall with 50 open spaces compared to a single block that only has 3 open spaces, they produce the same amount of resin. Resin does not care how many open spaces there are, but it does need to have at least 3 open spaces. If you have less than 3 open spaces, that will dramatically lower your rates. Because more often than not, it spawns 3 resin instead of 2 or 1. So even just a single floating block technically has 6 sides, and then a floating block attached to a heart would have 5 sides. So a single block is equal to a wall. And just in case you're on Java, or you're just curious about the differences between Java and Bedrock mechanics, there are several parts of this farm that will not work on Java. For one, Java cannot place things on pistons or on top of pistons, and also Java does not have trident killers. So because of that, I'm not really sure if they have a fully AFK version of this farm. They might be able to use wolves in a boat, but I think you would have to punch the creaking to get the wolves to actually aggro it. So regardless, I'm pretty sure you would need to have an auto clicker for a fully AFK version of this farm on Java. And that's just yet another thing that we have better on Bedrock. Now, another thing to note is that this specific farm is only designed for a single creaking. And then rather than copying this farm every 16 blocks, it's super easy to make a multi-creaking farm, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure I can just stretch this design into a multi-creaking version. So just stay tuned for that video. It should be coming out very shortly as long as everything goes nice and smoothly, but I really can't imagine why it wouldn't. We'll just have a really long trident killer for all of them. But that's all we got for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and be sure to leave a comment. If you have any questions or requests, I will do my best to help you out. But always remember that you are totally awesome, and above all, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye!